Hey folks, back with Ancient Cosmography. I'm going to try to correct some of the mistakes in my last video, although I think nobody watched my last video anyway, so I guess it doesn't matter too much. But so this is the scene of, there's the Celtic story, the Gaelic story of the Great Boar and Diarmid. So this Diarmid is the Great Boar, of course, and they battle each other and then they both die in the battle. And so it's basically the same as the Lascaux depiction of what seems to be Australia and New Guinea. That New Guinea would be Diarmid here, laying down, crushed by this by Australia. And Australia, I think, in the oldest avatar from Sulawesi, is depicted as a boar. But in France, they had bison, so they used bison. But in Scotland and Ireland, they probably didn't have bison, so they used a boar again. And, the York Peninsula, Cape York Peninsula, does look a bit like, the face of a boar. And, they both seem to depict the Great Barrier Reef, like all these reefs around here, as hair on the animal. And same as in this story, they say that this boar is covered with these poisonous bristles, poisonous hairs. And ultimately, that's what kills Diarmid, is one of the poison bristles. So it seems to be that the poison bristle that actually ultimately kills him, like in the story that he tells him, first he says, measure the boar, measure it down from the snout. So first he measures around this way, and then he's on the back of the boar, and then so it's Finn McCool, another giant that hates him because he's jealous of him because of women and stuff. And so he tells him, all right, now come around back the other way towards me on the snout, on the top of the snout, and go against the hairs. And that's when Diarmid dies, and that's when he gets caught up in the Great Barrier Reef. But especially he gets caught up on the Warrior Reef, which is, it's basically part of the Great Barrier Reef complex or whatever, but generally, like on maps, like they end the Great Barrier Reef like right at the edge of Australia, because the Great Barrier Reef's job is just to protect Australia. So even though everything beyond that is exactly the same geologically, they don't include it. But basically, this is all part of the same reefy type of formation. And this is the Warrior Reef, which is closest to New Guinea, but it's still kind of connected to all these Australian Great Barrier Reef type of things. And so that makes perfect sense. And, it's all the only point of, or the main point of these stories is to protect sailors from dangers and tell them where they can go. So this is an important, basically what a reef is something that it's not an island, because it's, generally at least part of the time underwater, but often part of the time it's also above water, or it's just very close to the surface. So obviously that's a hazard for sailors, and in many ways it's a worse hazard than actual islands and rocks sticking up out of the water or anything like that, because these reefs are so low lying that they're often invisible, or they can be invisible, especially at night. So it makes sense why this whole story about Australia and New Guinea would focus on this reef, because this is clearly like the most gnarly reef of this area. You know, like this is the Great Barrier Reef over here. And, you know, there's some gnarly parts in here, but for sheer like size, girth or whatever, this definitely outdoes anything over here. I mean, there are some reefs that are this big in the Great Barrier Reef, but they're further south. So yeah, Finn McCool was jealous of Diarmid. So if this is Finn McCool, he seems to be he seems to represent well, it's like you can't even see the text. Okay, Finn McCool. So he's represents the Isle of Skye right here. This is Skye. This is the Scottish coastline. So, you know, he's technically an island, but, or, you know, his head is technically an island, but it's just barely an island. It's kind of functionally a peninsula in some ways, but, and then this is his famous hand and thumb, that he's always putting his thumb in his mouth in the stories. But in this case, he's using his thumb to light the lighter, to blaze a blunt. And this is him in ultra cool mode. And, you know, smoking on some perp. And then, so yeah, here, reef. A chain of rocks or coral or a ridge of sand at or near the surface of water. So at the surface of water would be dangerous. Near the surface of water could be even more dangerous, because it's further down but still high enough to take out a ship, especially a ship of any size. Compare atoll, barrier reef. B, a hazardous obstruction. So that's like, they just say that's its second definition, is just straight up a hazardous obstruction. And certainly it was a hazardous obstruction to Diarmid in the story, and it was his end. And so here it is again. Here you can see again how much bigger the Warrior Reef is compared to like the rest of the Great Barrier Reef of this, at least this side of the Great Barrier Reef. It totally dwarfs any other reef in this area. And because it's so close to Papua, it makes perfect sense why it would be seen as the poison hair that kills him. What we got here it is again. So yeah, it's like right up against Papua almost. So makes perfect sense. Much bigger than any other reef in the area. All right, what else do we have here? Okay, this might be his eye. This is around the right place on Papua that it could represent the eye of Diarmid. It's like some lakes and or a lake. I forget the name. And there's a chance that even all of this, well, no, probably not. I was going to say there's a chance that all this could be included in the boar's snout, but who knows? It might just be a different color, more due to territorial reasons than actual bathymetry. So if you guys ever have to sail the Torres Strait between Australia and Papua, at least now you'll have some idea what you're up against. Papua. This one's only red because it's based on some random criteria of like some geological programs or something. But it kind of works for my purposes. All right, so this could be another avatar of Finn McCool. You know, he's always sucking on his thumb. This could be an avatar of his face and his thumb in the island right next to Papua's face, right here, this island. Because it's said that Finn McCool comes to try to revive, or, you know, supposedly to revive Diarmid, but he still hates Diarmid, so... Oh, and this might be the white bronze vessel that was supposed to be in the tree of, you know, the magic tree with Dear Cora in another Fenian poem that's supposed to have a jumping carp jumping out of it. I mean, it seemed like it was something else, but there's a possibility it's this or both. Often the same thing can be represented multiple times. So here just shows more of the Great Barrier Reef. So the Great Barrier Reef, it totally makes sense that this would be depicted as hair, because a lot of the reefs are like hairs along the coast. They're like these skinny long things sticking out like that. And then for this to be is also a long skinny one, so, or, you know, a kind of similar shape, so it makes sense that this would all just be considered the hair on the top of the snout. And that and all these rivers here, I think these are the biggest, or some of the biggest estuaries in Papua, so I think that represents him bleeding out and dying and whatever. That's his injury. Not sure if that's like the East Sepik River or what that is, but and then so yeah, that's okay. So near this guy is, you know, there's, the story ends where they say water drunk from Finn's hands. I don't know. I mean, I'm going to pronounce it Finn. There's a bunch of ways maybe to pronounce it, but water drunk from Finn's hands had the power of healing. But when Finn gathered water, he twice let it run through his fingers before he could bring it to Diarmid. Threatened by his son Oysen and his grandson Oscar, he fetched water a third time, but this time he was too late. Diarmid had died. So this is Diarmid dying or whatever, Papua. So he's trying to get the water in his mouth. So I think it's that the first one is this one. And the water this is Finn's hand in the first instance, and all the water going through his fingers is all these little islands all around it that are like the water like falling out of his hand. And then the second one is this one where he's almost there. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna save you, bro, I got you, ha, psych. And then he lets it all run out there. Like, the gods are real assholes. Like, if you read the ancient, you know, stories in every religion, they're very petty. Like, that's the point. You're not supposed to admire the gods in their, at least not ethically. You're supposed to maybe admire their strength or something, but you're not supposed to see them as like moral exemplars. Um, or if you do it, it will not go well. You'll have a bad time. Anyway, so yeah, this is the first one. He's like, here, I'm gonna save you. Psych, it lets it all this water run out. Second time, oh yeah, I'm almost gonna do it here. I'm putting it right in. Oh, psych. And then the third one, he's like, okay, this one, I'm gonna actually put it, give you this water. And so this is his hand again. But he's already dead, so womp womp. It's like, and so I was thinking that it was some other islands. I did think this was one of them, but I thought the other two were over here. But the reason I've settled on these three as representing his hand in the three instances is largely because they are all very similarly sized and shaped, and B, they're very close to each other, and C, they are very close to Diarmid's mouth. So there were some other things that could seemingly fit in a similar way, of like larger islands with a bunch of smaller islands seeming to kind of drip out of them. But all things considered, I think it's this, because these are right there, right next to the mouth, and they fit pretty well. Yeah, that this one is full of water, but you just can't see it because he's not letting it drip out through his fingers like the other two times. Yeah, so it's like every part of this story will help sailors navigate sketchy areas. Because here it's like, okay, you see his mouth, you see his head, then you have to realize that there's going to be something about Finn's hands feeding him water right around there that you got to watch out for. And so then immediately you see this one. Okay, yeah, it's like Finn's hands, very stylized, obviously, with water dripping out of it. And then so you look for the other two, and then you see like this one and that one, and then you say, okay, cool beans, I just got to navigate around those things. Or maybe I could land on one of them and start a farm and raise some chickens. All right, so guess I'll leave it there. Let me see if I have anything else going on the screen. So this is the oldest, what maybe the oldest depiction of Australia, oldest extant known depiction of Australia, from the Sulawesi caves of Indonesia, basically right there. And so in this, I'm thinking that this is Australia as this boar, and that this is Sulawesi, because it's painted on Sulawesi. I think they have Sulawesi as a monkey that's hanging onto a vine, and the vine is actually also part of Sulawesi, and the monkey has his hands in the air and his knees up, and I think his hands in the air are like these two islands. This is his head, and his knees up are like these two big peninsulas of Sulawesi.